Hey ladies and gentlemen, Mapletree Industrial Trust actually did an acquisition. It's made an acquisition at Osaka Data Centre in Japan just 2 weeks ago. Now at that time when they announced the deal, the share price was 232. The share price has now plunged way below its placement price of 2.212. Now, essentially, before the deal even happened, we already informed our GCP Global investors that you may be able to get a great chance to buy below the placement price of 2.212. Mind you, the placement price of 2.212 does not qualify you for the dividend of 2.48, which is simply put, meaning that essentially, if you can get a price at below 2.212 minus off the 2.48, roughly about 220 and below, you get a good deal on an MIT. Now, in this week's video, that's what we're going to explore. Essentially, how and to what extent were we able to even foresee this actually happening before it happened just last Thursday. So remember, we were forecasting this 2 weeks ago. Ladies and gentlemen, that we asked ourselves in GCP Global Investment class on the 27th of May was this, you see. Now, as this slide shows, MIT made an acquisition in data in Osaka. Is it actually a good acquisition? Ladies and gentlemen, I think, we have to take a step back as investors and realize, that, well, we cannot possibly be in a good position to analyze all acquisitions well, okay? So essentially, if MIT is going to spend $500 million, that's $500 million, actually investing in data center, you jolly make sure that it's well good, and especially when you're coming to the market to raise $300 million in terms of new placement shares at 2.212. Now, if you look at this particular slide, guess what it says? It says it's 100% leased to an established data center operator, and there's a footnote too. Now, hey, this is another case where the data center REIT does not reveal who is this particular client. Now, if you reference to our earlier videos on basically the collapse of digital core REIT, you will notice that essentially one of the key things, ladies and gentlemen, that we told you in investing in the real estate investment trust is that, hey, before the event actually eventualized, the share price would take a sharp drop or a sharp rise. In this case, it's a sharp drop. Like in this case, we found that Systema, which is actually one of the biggest established top 10 clients of not only just Digital Core, but also MIT and Data Center, when they filed for Chapter 11 just finally, again 3 weeks ago, essentially the share price for Digital Core has already plunged by more than 50%. So for you, the REIT investor, we must be very careful, very cautious. And guess what? If you don't even know the client's name, how can you even foresee its bankruptcy? Right? So that's the first thing that we warned you, and this is happening now in MIT's. Now take a look at the second slide to justify its acquisition, which MIT dished out. Again, another very ambiguous statement from the REIT. Well, you can see, ladies and gentlemen, it says, as highlighted in the lavender square, it says it's a Tier 3 plus equivalent data center with sufficient redundancy to support mission critical needs. Huh? Ladies and gentlemen, in plain English, can you please explain that to me? If I've been following real estate investment trusts for the last 21 years in detail, covering all sectors, I find this statement of little value add. So please explain to me in simple English. So once again, as we explained to GCP Global Investors clients, essentially if a REIT is going to come on to hit you a 500 million purchase, they jolly well explain it carefully, especially the technical terms, so that you and I are able to make an informed decision. Before you even make the decision, in this case, they're adding ambiguity to something that's obviously critical mission in their mission to sell the deal to you. So did they accomplish what they did? You decide. So you can see, ladies and gentlemen, this is a statement where MIT dish out, so they did the placement at 2.212. The next slide shows, the day after, to say that its advanced dividend is going to be at 2.48, which was actually supplemented. But what is more important, ladies and gentlemen, is that during our class on 27th of May, this is what we presented. Okay, you can see, ladies and gentlemen, that 220 in the last 1.5 years has been a critical support for MIT share price, notwithstanding its distribution yield of 5.5% when they actually hit those levels, and it's a slight premium at 20% premium to its NAV. You notice that every time it crossed and went below to 20 on 1, 2, 3, 4 occasions, the share price have rebounded. So we told GCP Global Investment students on 27th of May, when the share price was 225, to be prepared for an eventuality, for an optional bet that if MIT drops below the 220 again, maybe it's going to be a great investment. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, like in our last video on Capital Land Centers, we told you that those people who went in to buy the placement, like in this case for Capital Land Centers at 2.727. In fact, the last 26 private placements since 2020, practically all of them have lost big money. And surprising, isn't it? You scratch your head, ladies and gentlemen. Most of these investors that took the private placements are high net worth individuals, index funds, REITs funds, family offices, and very rich people. Well, perhaps they have money to lose. I certainly don't have, and I basically make sure that GCP Global Investor students don't fall into that route. So what has happened since our class finished? Well, we just got back from EPO, and essentially you can see, right, from the high of 2.32 that the REIT actually achieved on the 22nd of May. Since last Thursday, the share price has fallen below 220, right? So remember, if you take 2.212 minus off the advance dividend to be paid in July of 2.4 cents, you're getting about 2.18, 220, rather 220 level. In this case, since last Thursday, you get to buy it at 2.17. Last Friday, you get to buy at 2.17 the low. And today's low, that's Monday beginning this week, you will still manage to get it at a low of 2.17. Is this the last buying opportunity before the interest rate scenario decision by Colin Powell actually comes out on Thursday morning? Well, if you've been following our classes, you notice what we are betting on. But the key thing, ladies and gentlemen, is that in our investment classes, we actually guide you to actually look at the key proponents and the timing of this real estate investment trust. At least you know what you're betting on, ladies and gentlemen. And in our last graph, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the share price now has fallen, to below 220, right? So, and these last 3 days, last Thursday, Friday, and today's share price when it went to a low of 217, actually is the 5th time that it went below 220. Remember, in the preceding 4 times when it went below 220, the share price subsequently rebounded. One of the strongest rebound was actually in October of last year when the share price went from below 220 to 240. We made a huge fortune on this, and that's how you make millions in real estate investment trusts, as what our book, Making Your Millions in Real Estate Investment Trusts, actually sets out to do, and what we at our weekly video actually sets out to do. So hope you enjoyed this week's video, because this is going to be the last video that we do before our trip to Japan. Surprisingly, to Osaka. And guess what? Surprisingly, we are going to stay at Shin Osaka area, which is actually 1 station away from Umeda, or Osaka Station, where MIT Data Center is located. Well, if we walk by there on the way to Shinsegae or Dontoburi, I'll take a picture and let you know. But in the meantime, enjoy the share price while it lasts, because it won't last forever. So adios and arigato.